Section 4 of The Black Cat, Volume 6, Number 10, July, 1901. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Greg Giordano. The Black Cat, Volume 6, Number 10, July, 1901. Section 4. Mrs. Todd's 3 Flights Front, by Richard Barker Shelton. Mrs. Todd's lodging house was a model of its kind. It was on a quiet street, yet convenient to the cars. Its rooms were commodious and well heated, and Mrs. Todd was the soul of cleanliness. The lodgers, too, were in keeping with the house. A married couple, a retired schoolteacher, 1 or 2 working women, and several pleasant-spoken young men, who made little unnecessary noise and paid their rent promptly. All in all, fortune had smiled on Mrs. Todd, since, in early widowhood, she had taken this lodging-house as a means of livelihood. Yet there was one grain of anxiety in her cup of happiness. 3 flights front, at the top of the house, was, to all appearances, a most desirable room. All day long the sun shone into it, and its windows gave a pleasant outlook across the chimney-pots of the houses opposite. It had a new carpet and very tidy curtains, but, despite these attractions, 3 flights front was seldom occupied for any length of time. Various young men had rented it, and once a young woman had stayed in it for nearly 3 weeks. In each case, however, the lodger had decided to change quarters rather suddenly, and had sought out Mrs. Todd, and more or less haltingly and shamefacedly had given his reason for leaving. The landlady was sure, from their actions, that they preferred to keep the real reason to themselves, though what it might be she was unable to surmise. Many times when the room was vacant she herself had occupied it for a night, but nothing occurred to disturb her in the least. After the 9th occupant of the room had paid his rent in the middle of the week and departed, bag and baggage, she decided to sift the matter thoroughly. To this end she moved up to the front room at the top of the house, prepared to meet the ghost or demon or whatever it was that was depriving an honest woman of the rent of a good room. One morning, 2 weeks later, she moved down again, rather white and shaken. "I shall never sleep in that room again," she said to Jane, her maid of all work, and as she would not discuss the matter further, it was dropped. Thereafter, when prospective lodgers applied to her, if no other room was vacant, Mrs. Todd would say, "I have one 3 flights front, but really I don't believe you want it," and generally this was sufficient to send them away. One day there came a brisk young man, and as the ill-starred room was the only one she had, Mrs. Todd made her usual response to his inquiry. The young man happened to be of the persistent type. He inquired the price and other particulars, and ended by asking to see the room. He seemed quite satisfied with it. In fact, he so expressed himself in no uncertain terms. Mrs. Todd hesitated. "Before you take it," she said, "I must tell you there's something, well, queer about it." "Ghost?" said the young man cheerfully. "If that's it, I'd like to meet him." Mrs. Todd shook her head. "Not exactly that," she said. "Still, something decidedly unpleasant." "Pshaw!" said he. "There's nothing unpleasant about this room," and he handed out a week's rent. In this way John Knox, medical student, began his occupancy of Mrs. Todd's 3 flights front. A week, 2 weeks went past, and nothing unusual occurred. Tuesday of the 3rd week, Knox rapped on the parlor door. Mrs. Todd's face wore an anxious expression as he entered. "I found it," he said laconically. "What?" exclaimed Mrs. Todd. "Not the noise?" "Yes," answered Knox, tersely as usual. "Gas globe." "Well, I declare!" said the landlady. "I never could locate it. How often have you heard it?" "Twice," he replied. "First time I heard it was night before last. It started up that infernal drone about 10. Hunted all around before I could place it. Can't account for it. Can you?" Mrs. Todd shook her head helplessly. "At it again last night," Knox continued. "I shut off the gas and stuffed the globe with absorbent cotton. That stopped it. Then I got curious and took it out. Every time I unloaded the cotton, off it would go like the whine of a cello. Sometimes it swelled and sometimes it sank. Deuced if I could find out what made it. I'm not a bit superstitious, but I'll tell you frankly, I somehow don't enjoy it." Again Mrs. Todd shook her head. She half expected him to pay his rent and leave, as the rest had done. But Knox was of a different caliber, and said, "I'll buy another globe and see if it makes any difference." Mrs. Todd brightened up. The next day Knox brought up a similar globe and placed it over the gas burner. A few days later he again knocked at the parlor door. "Same old tune," said he, and Mrs. Todd thought he looked a trifle pale. "Somehow this thing gets hold of me. Can't reason it out, you know. Funny thing, too. I don't seem to want to smash those globes. There's some sort of fascination listening to that whine." "I know how it is," said Mrs. Todd, and she shivered. "Is it all the time?" "No. Seems to take its own sweet will. It's liable to tune up any hour of the day or night." "Mr. Knox," Mrs. Todd spoke with great effort, "there's a story that once, before I took the house, a musician had that room. He went insane and used to sit for hours playing one note on a cello, now loud, now soft. Afterwards he shot himself, there, in that very room. They say he'd play the keynote of a requiem, and every now and then he'd stop and listen for an echo, and laugh to himself. It may be exaggerated." "It's rot," said Knox shortly, and turning on his heel he went upstairs. Yet when the globe started up its drone early that evening, he felt cold chills running up and down his spine. "What a timid ass you're getting to be, my boy," he said to himself as he rose and lighted a pipe with a hand that was a trifle unsteady. "Played the keynote," he said musingly. "Rather a morbid fancy, that. Played the keynote. By George!" He stopped and laid aside the pipe. Suddenly he whipped off the globe, and donning his hat and overcoat, he rushed downstairs carrying the troublesome globe under his arm. It was a frosty evening, and the wind was blowing briskly. He hurried to a store on the avenue and asked for gas globes. A number of the ordinary shape were laid before him. He took a pencil from his pocket and sounded first his own globe, and then the others. Presently he found one which rang a full note lower than his own. This he purchased, and with it hastened back to the house. He placed the original globe over the burner. In a moment it sent out a low whine. Then he tried his purchase. It was silent. He went downstairs and called Mrs. Todd. "I have it," said he, and displayed the two globes. Then another inspiration came to him. "Where's the skylight?" he asked. Mrs. Todd took him into a hall closet and showed him a ladder running upwards. This he ascended and went out on the roof. Presently he was back with a sigh of relief. "Our ghostly musician," said he, "has a lot of wires running across the roof. There's a standard holding them just overhead. When it's windy they begin to hum, and one of them drones the keynote of the gas globe here, and the vibrations, carried along the wall, set the globe going. The first globe I bought rang the same note as the original one, so you see that's why it tuned up also. This one is somewhat lower. Most of them I found were pitched like the first one, and that's why it doesn't sing. Glad I know what it is." "Oh, so am I," said Mrs. Todd fervently. They were silent for a moment. Then Knox spoke. "Must have been creepy to see him do that, though. I wonder if he really did." End of section 4.